You know, sometimes you look at the news and you just think the entire world is just collapsing. But this week, a building actually did collapse. Hi, welcome back to the Colorblind Architect Podcast. I'm your host, David, and wow, that building collapse in Miami, that was freaky. If you haven't seen the video, look for it. It's been in the news all over, and it is just frightening. Like, this is not the kind of thing that you see happening in the United States of America all that often. But yeah, I mean, a building just up and collapses, just like randomly. And there's 4 confirmed dead, still dozens missing, and oh my goodness, such a disaster. And you know, as an architect, that's something that is a really big concern for me. I want to know what happened, because that's part of my job, is making sure buildings don't collapse like that. And so I am sure that that's going to be something that in the architecture and structural engineering community, we are going, as a profession, we're going to be studying that as a case study for a long time to come, to try to make sure that what caused that collapse doesn't happen again. Just from the video, it almost looks like the foundation subsided, and then the building just pancaked as a result of the foundation giving way. Which, I mean, come on, that's like a nursery rhyme, right? We talk about the foolish man built his house upon the sand, the wise man built his house upon the rock. I mean, it's a nursery rhyme, right? It's something that we learn as little kids, the importance of a foundation. And when the foundation is not on solid ground, the whole building is going to come toppling down, as it did, and it can have devastating impacts. And it feels kind of like that's happening with our nation and even with our global society, because instead of continuing to work on our foundation, making sure that our foundation is solid and secure, as a society, we've become unmoored from the foundation. We've actually gotten ourselves off of the foundation, and we're just floating and wandering as a building. And buildings don't usually do very well when they don't have a foundation. Now, granted, there's RVs, technically that's a building. RVs go around all the time. But see, here's the thing. They also have a foundation. It's just their foundation is mobile. It's called the wheels, the struts, the chassis. That is their foundation. So even in that case, you have a foundation. You have to. Because gravity is always there. It's gonna pull you down. Now, whether or not it actually was the foundation in Miami, I don't know. But it's still something that we need to really look into. One of the other things that just boggles my mind. So we've been looking at these nominees that Joe Biden's been putting in. Some of these nominees are just terrible, absolutely terrible. The BLM nominee, Bureau of Land Management, for those of you who do not know, that BLM used to actually refer to the Bureau of Land Management, not Black Lives Matter. No, Bureau of Land Management is really important where I live. We have a tremendous number, a tremendous amount of land here in Utah, Nevada, all around throughout the West, that is owned by the federal government, that isn't necessarily being used for any particular purpose, so it's under the purview of the Bureau of Land Management, which there's a reason why it's largely unused land. Most of it is pretty wasteful land. There's nothing there. The soil's not fertile. There's inadequate water sources. Typically, it's just land that nobody wants, and so the federal government has to manage that land. Well, this new BLM nominee that Joe Biden just nominated, apparently she hates children. She thinks that no family should have more than 2 children, and she also apparently hates ranchers and doesn't want cattle grazing on BLM land. Wow, that's a massively stupid idea. Okay, let me explain why. It's not just ranchers, the rights of ranchers and the function of ranchers and the need for meat. I understand that can be argued from the leftist standpoint as being unnecessary. What's stupid about it is, okay, I've spent a lot of time on BLM land, camping. One of the things that you'll notice in BLM land is the cows. And why are there so many cows? Because they allow ranching. Now, what is valuable to those cows? Why is it good to have them grazing on BLM land? Well, it's because they're ruminants. They poop, right? See, when cows poop, contrary to the idiots who think that it causes global warming, no, actually, here's what happens with cow poop. It goes into the ground, it fertilizes it, and it allows plants to grow, specifically native trees, native shrubs, like the Utah juniper, which is a very, very important type of tree out here in the desert. Because, sure, it's only a 10 to 15 foot tall tree, and it's just a juniper. But it helps prevent forest fires if it's well nurtured with good fertilizer, and then by retaining the soil, less erosion, less dust up in the air, which also helps air quality. It also helps a lot of the animals and other wildlife that live there, because if you have adequate fertilizer in there, which there is not adequate fertilizer with just the deer and antelope and elk and moose, there's just not enough of them. And sure, you might say, okay, well, let more deer grow. Yeah, sure. Yeah. How about you say that to all the people who die from car crashes with deer? You might be thinking, okay, well, we need more wildlife bridges. Yeah, we do. We need more wildlife overpasses, because we need the wildlife, but we also need the cows. The cows actually serve a good functional purpose, because we don't have enough buffalo doing that anymore. The West was covered in buffalo before we stupid humans came in and pretty much eradicated them. Now there's some buffalo left. There's very small herds of them, but there's not nearly enough buffalo to do the ruminant work to fertilize the West. And in other words, we need more cow poop. Yes, that's right. I said it. We need more cow poop. And so, to the nominee of Joe Biden for Bureau of Land Management, she's stupid. And she's one of these environmentalists that thinks that humans are the problem. Now, this always amazes me, okay? It really amazes me that... So, these environmentalists who think that humans are the problem and that we need fewer humans. Okay, so, let me ask them a question. Okay, you believe in the theory of evolution, right? You believe in Charles Darwin. and that we evolved from apes. So, aren't we part of nature? Because last time I checked, if we are animals, then that means we are part of nature. And, we talk about wolves being a keystone species in Yellowstone, right? And they recognize that a predator like a wolf is a keystone species, but they don't recognize that humans might actually be the most important keystone species, that we are the ones who manage the earth and help it stay healthy, which is exactly the purpose of why God created us and put us on this earth. Oh, that's right. We evolved from apes? Okay. Well, if we evolved from apes, still, we're part of nature. And we're pretty dang important to the functioning of the planet's ecology, because after all, there is a ton of species that rely on us to keep them going. There's a lot of species that would go extinct if it wasn't for humans. So, to these environmentalists who say that we are the problem, yeah, we're the problem, but we're also the solution. So stop it with your genocidal thoughts, you environmentalists. Please understand. We all want a good environment, okay? We do. After all, we have to live in it. But let's remember that humans aren't the enemy here. We just need to direct our efforts in the right direction, which I think we can do. Okay. So then we get on to Joe Biden talking about nuking citizens. He said that you're going to need F-15 fighter jets and nuclear weapons to be able to go up against the federal government. And he also talked about how if there's a insurrection, he could just nuke American citizens. And I'm thinking, did Joe Biden just threaten to annihilate swaths of the population? Wow, that's bad. Who did we elect? Oh yeah, that's right, Donald Trump. But who's currently occupying the White House? Yes. I'm joking, people. I know that Joe Biden won the Electoral College, so he is the official president. Now, whether or not the electors that were selected to go, that's a whole nother thing, but I'm not going to get into it. But the point is, yeah, he's a disaster. And then you hear this General Milley, and he's talking about critical race theory and talking about the importance of teaching these things to the soldiers, but they're not also teaching the other side. They're not teaching the Milton Friedman or Friedrich Hayek side of the story. They're only teaching Marxism in the military academies. And I'm thinking, okay, that's a little bit creepy. I mean, personally, I've studied the Communist Manifesto. I've studied a lot of these communist works because I feel it's important to know your enemy. But I also have studied Milton Friedman and Friedrich Hayek and John Adams. By the way, if you haven't read John Adams' Wealth of Nations, you should. It's a tough read, but it is such a valuable read. And so, but here's the thing. What really shocked me about what General Milley was talking about was he was saying a bunch of words, but never actually getting to any kind of point or truth. He just kept circling around. And I've noticed that this is true of a lot of politicians, a lot of people, that they seem unmoored from truth. It's like they can't actually bring themselves to talk about the truth. Joe Biden's the same way. He's constantly saying crap that's just so stupid and unanchored. It's not tied to the truth. And it makes you wonder, and let me just adjust the lighting because the sun is trying to help me look like an angel, and I can assure you I am not an angel, but at the same time, it is kind of like a cool like halo effect. I don't know. Anyways, back to Joe Biden and like General Milley and just being completely off the truth. And the thing it makes me think about, it makes me think about Pontius Pilate. So if you're familiar with the story of Jesus, you know that after he gets arrested and on trumped up charges, and he's brought to Pontius Pilate, who is the regional governor of the land of Palestine, which is a Roman province at that time, right? So here he's trying Jesus as a judge, right? And at one point, he says, "What is truth?" What's fascinating about this statement is that I think this was exactly who Pontius Pilate was. He was somebody who he was basically a career bureaucrat. He was trying to rise up the ranks, and he had risen to a pretty prominent role. I mean, to be appointed as a regional governor in the Roman Empire, that was pretty high up. But at the same time, he had his boss, and then he also had the people that he was governing. He was in a very tough spot, so he was constantly having to balance a bunch of different competing concerns. And as many humans do when they are in situations where they are under a lot of political and social pressure, they will go with the politically expedient or the politically easy thing. And in order to do so, you kind of have to discount the value of truth. You have to unmoor yourself from truth in order to do the politically expedient thing. Because if you're tied to truth, then you're going to have this constant battle inside yourself. And it makes it really hard to live with yourself if you're believing in truth and then you know that you're doing evil stuff because of political expediency, but you know that if you do the right thing, you lose everything. Well, that's exactly where we are right now. And I think General Milley is a perfect example of this political expediency. I don't know him personally. I barely know anything about him other than what he testified in Congress. But of what I heard of him, like the words that he said, he sounded like a career bureaucrat. He sounded like the kind of person who is constantly trying to kiss up to his superiors, trying to make sure he's staying in the good graces of the boss. We all know the type. They're the people that you hate in your office, right? They're the people that are constantly trying to one-up you. They try to denigrate other people to make themselves look better in the eyes of the boss. They're constantly kissing up to the boss, and they're yes men, right? These kinds of people, they exist in all walks of life because they're doing what's politically expedient and they're not being tied to truth. But that's the thing. We need truth. Truth is vitally important for us to be able to proceed. If you've ever followed Brett Weinstein's podcast, the Dark Horse podcast, I highly recommend it. But what Brett Weinstein talks about is if you become unmoored from truth, then science dies. You cannot have science without truth. If you can't question things you can't have truth. And that's where we're at right now. We're at this we've come to this weird point in our society where all of a sudden people are scared to speak out and say the truth because they're scared what it's going to do to their careers. And oh my goodness, that is such a stupid thing. Now, I get it. I understand people are going to be scared to lose their jobs because it is a scary thing. You know, personally, one of the toughest times in my life was about, I guess it was about 10 years ago when I was laid off along with a bunch of other people in a mass layoff at the company I was working at the time. Now, at the time, it was a really tough thing to go through. It was devastating. I hit some of my lowest lows during that time. But I managed to rebuild myself. I managed to start a business, and over time that business eventually started making money, and then eventually that business actually led me to the job that I currently have. And the great thing is now with my current job, I think about, well, you know, if this one ends, I'll just start my business back up again. It's no biggie, you know? I'll find a way to make things work. I'll find a way to provide for my family. And what it does for me is it gives me a great deal of freedom. See, knowing that I can do what I need to do to provide for my family, knowing that I'll make that happen because I'll do the work necessary to make sure that I do that. I'm not so dependent on a job. I'm grateful for the good job that I have right now. It's a great job. I have an awesome boss who takes good care of me with the salary and benefits, and I'm like, this is great. Now, I much preferred working for myself, but at the same time, I'm like, you know, they made me an offer that was really hard for me to refuse, especially with the fact that they still let me have a ton of intellectual, political, and social freedom, even project freedom. I get to choose projects. I get to go out and find my own projects, which is great, which is what I was doing with my business before. It's just now I've got a guaranteed salary plus bonuses, which is very helpful to creating a stable income. But if I was to lose that job, I know I could fall back on my business again, and I could rebuild. I could do what I need to. And that freedom's important. That knowledge that you can do that. That knowledge that it's not the end of the world if you lose your job. Gives you the freedom to speak truth. And so to all of you out there, and especially, oh my goodness, anybody in a government job, please just stand up for what you believe in. Now, if you believe in communism, then be open about it so that we can know who you are. Why? Because I think it helps when we're honest with one another, because then at least we can have an honest conversation about what you're proposing, instead of you trying to, you know, go through the cover of darkness to get your agenda through because you believe that everybody's going to run you out of town. Now, that's true because Americans hate communism. Okay? You can't expect us to want to believe in a wife-beating racist like Karl Marx when we've got freedom and economic liberty and happiness. I mean, why would we want to go to slavery in the form of communism, where a few elite people in Washington would be controlling everything. No, thank you. I would like to have my own life. I want to be able to make my own choices. So, you communists, you can just go F off, because seriously, I want my freedom. And I'm pretty sure most Americans agree with me that we don't want communism. So just go back into the miserable little hole that you used to be in. Or even better, to all you communists out there, how about you wake up and recognize reality, recognize truth. You've been believing in a fantasy, because Marxism is a fantasy. Even Karl Marx referred to it as a phantasm. Yeah. I'm pretty sure Karl Marx even knew that he was full of it. He wasn't a stupid man. He was a horribly lazy and evil man, but he wasn't a stupid man. He knew what he was doing. And so, understanding that he was full of it can help you recognize that your whole entire belief system is full of it. So what is truth? What is truth? Well, truth is an objective reality, provable by science, provable also through the Holy Spirit. Now, if you're a Christian like me, you believe in the Holy Spirit, and you believe that you can pray to God and have the Holy Spirit tell you the truth. And that's exactly what I would say right now. You wonder what the truth is? Well, you need to study it out. You need to learn. Okay? Don't just take the word of some so-called expert. Okay? Actually do the work. Learn. And then ponder about it. Yes, that's right. You got to think about it. You got to stop filling your brain with a bunch of Bachelorette episodes, and maybe if you sit and have some quiet time, or go on a hike, just don't break your foot like me, go on a hike, leave the AirPods out, go for a hike in pure silence for a few hours, and you know what's amazing? You have a lot of thoughts, and if you leave yourself alone with your thoughts for long enough, you might actually start coming to a knowledge of the truth. Why? Because you'll actually be able to think about it. You'll actually be able to understand it. And after all of that, yeah, pray. Yeah, I said it, pray. And if you don't believe in God, then meditate. Do something to connect with the spiritual side of you. And try to make sure that it's true. Because you've got a spirit in you that can help you figure out what's true and what's not. So, anyways, what is truth? Truth is real. It is there for you to discover. And I hope that you find it. And with that, I leave you for another day. Sorry for the lighting. The lighting's absolutely atrocious on this video, but I'm sorry. It's just that time of year. The sun is brutally bright. So just not a whole lot I can do about it. But thank you for joining me. If you actually made it through to the end of this video, consider liking and subscribing. Thank you, and I'm the Colorblind Architect. Peace out.